Hey everyone, when it comes to governance and politics in Canada, the status quo, whether they come from the right or the left side of the political spectrum, has been to use the pretense of benevolence and care and compassion as the cover for political implementation of policies that forcefully take from the productive wealth, income, and labor of the hardworking Canadians in this country to help bail out many different segments of society. And I'm not just talking about bailouts, actually, although that's what this video is going to be referencing, this article is going to be referencing, but it's also about propping up or subsidizing many industries. I mean, think about it. An industry, a small business, medium business, large business, mega corporation, I don't care what we're talking about here, folks, but in reality, I think every human being out there, especially every Canadian out there that I've ever talked to, acknowledges that no government entity, no central planning monolith or political party should have any capacity or ability to take from productive members of society who have been personally responsible and accountable, and then take that money, take their wealth, or plunder their incomes or plunder the fruits of their labor and give it to special interest groups or crony corporations or failing corporations or failing banks, for that matter, or any other external business, corporate entity or organization just to prop them up. That is something that, you know, free market matters, okay? Because free markets actually help hold everyone to account. Think about yourself. Think about anyone you've ever dealt with. If you knew that they could be bailed out or you could force other people to take care of them, are they going to be personally responsible? Are they going to hold themselves to a high standard when they know that there's a constant and never-ending safety net where they can rely on when they get themselves in trouble economically? Once again, folks, it's always about giving people the proper incentives and holding them responsible and accountable for their decisions and for their actions, whether it's individuals, corporations, or governments. Accountability is the only means at our disposal, or one of the most important means at our disposal, to hold everyone accountable. We all recognize that there are, not only are humans fallible, but there are some people that do some very bad, some very vile, some very despicable things. And yeah, we can write shit on paper or legislation that says, oh, we'll hold these actors to account, but then those actors just lobby government or financially support them, and they just overlook or ignore some of the bad acts and bad deeds and malinvestments or failing business structures, and instead use the Canadian people, the Canadian tax serfs, or the unborn at this point, because debt levels are so high now that the people that are alive today, the bulk majority of them, are never going to pay for this. Well, especially those that have created so much mess and so much of a disaster in the proper economy, in the natural economy. These people, a lot of them, especially the older boomers, right, that runs a lot of these crony corporations, they're not going to be around to pay off any of these debts. No, it's going to be younger people or the unborn that's going to be saddled with these kind of burdens, with these kind of financial burdens that they had nothing to do with. I mean, the level of immorality that we're seeing out there today on the political landscape and in the corporate landscape, yeah, it's disgusting, folks. And I'm sick and tired of hearing politicians from both sides of the political aisle making excuses and create narratives that suggest that it was the only thing they could do, right? Oh, our backs were up against the wall, and the only thing we could do was bail these corporations out because we needed to make sure we maintained all these jobs. Well, listen, these businesses are the ones that sacrificed or put in perilous danger their own business and their employees and their customers. It's not up to the Canadian taxpayer to have to subsidize or bail out these institutions just because they've made bad mistakes. And yes, may very well be that some of us in the private sector or consumers or taxpayers may suffer somewhat as a result, as a consequence of some of these failing business models or these failing corporations that don't seem to do things properly anymore. Well, listen, that's just the reality, folks, and the only way you're going to change or affect people's habits or behaviors is recognizing that reality. Bailing them out is not going to change anything other than giving them another opportunity to do the very same thing because they haven't learned from the first time, from their first bunch of failures. Headline out of CBC News Toronto, Tony Clement reflects on dire situation that led to 2009 auto bailout. We weren't bailing out a particular company, we were rescuing an industry, former industry minister says. Well, no, that's absolutely bullshit. That's a complete lie. That's a fabrication. That is complete political rhetoric. Because it wasn't the auto industry. Toyota wasn't bailed out. Ford wasn't bailed out. Mazda wasn't bailed out. Honda wasn't bailed out. And a lot of the other companies and corporations that deal with auto manufacturing and auto parts, they weren't bailed out. So no, it wasn't an industry. No, it was a couple mega corporations in Canada that have become inept and unwilling to structure their corporate business in a manner that's both profitable and prosperous for everybody while maintaining a profitability that keeps that potential in place for the foreseeable future. Just like you as a parent, if you have kids, if you keep bailing out your kids every time they make bad decisions and make real big mistakes that don't just affect them, but a whole lot of other people as well, if you just keep bailing them out, are they ever going to learn a lesson? Are they ever going to change course? I don't think so. I think they'll just take further advantage and maybe double down the next time and using the same kind of process or pretense of, well, if you don't help me, well, look at how many other people will hurt. They'll just keep using that same excuse, that same bullshit as a means to keep further plundering the Canadian people, or in a family setting, plundering those who have supported them all along. No, just like in your family, same goes for government and corporations, is you got to teach these people to learn to stand on their own 2 feet. And if they can't, yeah, we might help you when some situation arises where you have had no fault in the downfall of your business or your family model. But once again, it should always happen under voluntary interactions. So if GM and Chrysler wanted to be bailed out, the onus was on them to look to the Canadian people, to plead with them, to ask them, would you please help us out? But that didn't happen. No. Harper and his cronies like Clement here voted in large numbers to bail out these corporations. Even though we know they could have structured things, they could have gone through some kind of quasi-bankruptcy and still come out on the other side as a fully intact business. It's not like these auto companies, these gigantic multi-billion-dollar corporations, it's not like they were going to disappear tomorrow if the Canadian taxpayers didn't bail them out. No, they just would have had to have gone through a completely different method of restructuring, where things were done under the voluntary means instead of taken forcefully from the Canadian people. It was a decade ago that the North American auto industry was sent into a tailspin after the Lehman Brothers bankruptcy triggered the largest global financial crisis since the Great Depression. It sent shockwaves through many cities where car manufacturing and parts formed the backbone of the economy. Well, doesn't that really suggest that any particular community, they shouldn't have to rely on one employer or one industry to sustain that entire community? Don't you think diversity, having genuine, real diversity, would have allowed things to actually transition in a much better method than, once again, having this pretense of everyone relying on one giant corporation to sustain their livelihoods? This is where the free market comes into effect. This is where the free market matters most. Because if these failing corporations couldn't provide or maintain their business structure or business model in a free market environment, someone else would have stepped up the plate and taken over either the existing model and restructured it properly so it was once again prosperous and profitable for everyone involved, or they would start up another entire new business to replace that vacuum, that void that would come to exist. Free markets can always take care of this situation because a free market just means free people. And free people will always make the decision. If they care about cars, if people care about owning cars, they will figure a way. You don't need some central planning hack, some central planning government to keep constantly plundering the masses to bail out existing businesses or organizational structures. No, you just need the free market to flourish. To save the auto industry, the federal government in Ontario chose to give billions in support to General Motors and Chrysler to help them stay afloat, a decision that saw sharp criticism at the time. First of all, the federal government in Ontario, all they didn't do anything as far as, the federal government in Ontario, they don't have any money. Think about it. Look at the debts they're in. They don't have any money. So what they did, to be honest with you, let me just give you some clarity of thought, some clarity of what's actually trying to be said here. Let me read between the lines for you. No, the federal government and the Ontario government chose to force the Ontario people and the rest of Canadians to bail out this industry. That's what it represented. Now, the reason why you didn't hear as many people complaining or as much of an outrage that should have happened is because the federal government and the Ontario government realized, hey, death by 1,000 cuts. Well, people don't mind a cut here, cut there, right? So spread that out over millions of people. The damage didn't seem so severe because, once again, just mathematics, folks. But it is severe because that means every time this happens, it's set a precedent that, hey, we can do it again because, oh, don't worry, the Canadians, even if it only costs each Canadian a few bucks a month to bail these companies out, well, they won't mind that. But once again, it's not even just about the economics and the detriment as far as what it's going to mean for someone's personal income or their personal labor or their personal wealth. They might not mind that, but can't we talk about the moral implications? You don't hear that being talked about by anyone in the established media. It's just, once again, just trying to skirt around the edges, skirt around the issues, and try to present some kind of political narrative that's a backstop or lays cover for them using force as a means to an end, once again. Now looking back, Tony Clement, the federal industry minister during the crisis, told CBC Toronto the government wasn't just concerned about the auto industry being hit by job losses, but other related industries as well. It was a dire situation. We calculated the potential job loss in Canada of upwards of 400,000, Clement recalled. We looked at it from the point of view, we weren't bailing out a particular company, we were rescuing an industry on a time-limited basis. So yeah, they were thinking about, once again, these corporations, these failing corporations that obviously really did some bad stuff in the past to get to the point where they are failing so severely that they may no longer exist. Or that was the suggestion, that was the pretense, right? So yeah, Clement and the rest of the Harper acolytes, yeah, they were all concerned about that and how that would spread out in the economy. And yeah, sure, it would affect the rest of us. But then the difference is, how would we respond in kind as a Canadian person, right? Maybe you'd want to hold these corporations to account. Maybe you wouldn't want to support them at all. If they were so willing to put your productive income, your productive wealth, your productive labor on the line, or your kids or the unborn, well, maybe Canadians would choose to maybe not buy GM products, maybe not buy Chrysler products. If you fuckers are so bad at doing your own business model that you have to use the government to bail you out and to force us to pay for yourself, and to subsidize all these people that now living off these great benefits and these retirement packages that, once again, wouldn't have existed without the help of the taxpayers, right? Without us carrying that load. Think about the psychology and how that would have changed everybody along that whole process. You know, whether it's the bigwig CEOs in these corporations, all the way down to the employees, all the way down to the labor unions, all the way down to the consumers, ultimately. It would have affected their psychology and how they perceive these companies, and like I said, would have changed the landscape in this country, and it would have held everyone to account. And maybe there would have been better decisions by some of these bigwigs or new bigwigs at these corporations going forward, where they would stop using the taxpayer as a backstop to their failing models, to their failing business models. But no, the government stepped in once again because they were all concerned about these people. But what that really says is they obviously weren't too obviously concerned about the Canadian taxpayer, the people that have been forced to subsidize or bail out these failing industries or these failing corporations. They weren't sharing a whole lot of care and compassion towards the people that had nothing to do with this business model or the failure of this crony corporation. They weren't too concerned about using your productive wealth and your labor as a backstop to recapitalize and prop these companies up. Nope. So really, once again, governments are all about picking winners and losers in the economy. And if you happen to be on the winning side, good for you, I guess. But if you're on the opposite side of that, well, it's detrimental to you and everyone else. And once again, it's not even just about personal detriment. Once again, it's all about how that affects the psychology, how it affects the culture in any particular industry, in any particular country. Anyways, I'm not going to read any more of this article. My God, like I said, they'll just offer a bunch of crap excuses why it was so important to bail these corporations out. And you know what? I'm a guy, hey, listen, I've owned GMs for a large portion of my life. I'm less brand loyal now than I used to be, but I am the kind of guy, if you ask anyone that knows me, I love GM products, and I have for many years of my life. But I still, even as someone that actually genuinely enjoys thoroughly these products that GM has produced over the years, over the 100 years that they've been in existence as a business, as a corporation, I still wouldn't ever suggest that the Canadian people should be forced to bail them out. And I would probably suffer if something happened with GM, and maybe the costs were more expensive because they had to get other investors to help recapitalize and rebuild this business. There would been some negative effects for me too, but you know what? That's just the reality, folks. I'm willing to deal with that rather than force everyone else to bail out these corporations. I act out properly when it comes to morality and when it comes to prudence in regards to economics and finances. Unlike these political hacks that, once again, they don't have no skin in the game. It's not coming out of their pocket. Of course, it's easy to act benevolent and compassionate when you can force someone else to pay for the bill, to foot the bill. I hope you see this video someday, Tony. Maybe you'll start to reflect properly on some of the bad decisions you made in the past, and hopefully will never come to power ever again, so that you can make these same stupid decisions and thrust your own edicts and opinions on the Canadian people, on the masses in Canada. It's Canadian Libertarian, and I love liberty.